So for choosing the language for the presentation, you have in the upper hand of your screen, you have the view options. So you have two shared screens. One would be in English and then the other would be in Russian. So you will just need to choose from the view options your choice of language. And then for your choice of language for the simultaneous interpretation, on the lower part of your screen, so you have there the interpretation button. You can choose between English and Russian. So please make sure to choose the channel that you would use. And then as a general reminder, please mute your microphones when not speaking and position camera properly if you're gonna use the video function. And then for our speakers, we would like to request you to speak clearly and avoid talking too fast to allow our translators for their simultaneous interpretation. And then for our presenters, we would like to request you to stick to the time allocation and then mind the chat box for timekeeping reminders. And then should you have any questions or comments, please use the raise hand button for comments and questions and wait for the moderator to call on you before speaking. So the raise your hand option can be found in, if you click on the participants, you have the raise your hand option there.
Colleagues, I'm sorry. Miss Gulmira is trying to connect, but it says that the password is wrong. Pretty much the same problem that we experienced Tuesday. She's trying to type it in and connect, but it's still says that it's wrong.
Sergey, we have to make sure that it's all small. Small caps. Econ Dev 1.
Yeah, well, she's like copying right away from the mail and trying to insert it in the right field, but it just says that the password is wrong. She's trying right now.
Okay, maybe she can try again because a lot of us did not have any problems logging in now. So
several people write that they don't hear Russian translation. Well, probably because there is no one.
Maybe there is no translation yet.
Zenia or Rustam, okay. Can we try? Yes. So I'm switching to the Russian channel.
We hear translation well.
Yes, I can hear you. Okay, so Russian, Meshinglan, can you say something in English?
Yes, good afternoon from Manila to everyone.
Manila. Irene, your mic is muted.
So Russian translation is working.
Okay.
Also, please, when you mute the participants' mics remotely, please make sure that you do not mute our mics, mine and Zhenia's.
Noted on that, Rustam.
Thank you.
So, Meshinglan, that's all
Yes.
for our reminders. So I turn over to you, although we still have 3 minutes.
Yes, because we would like to start sharply at 4 p.m. So maybe I just wait 1 minute. So
Shymkent,
yes,
our delegation is almost, mostly connected, except for 1 or 2.
Okay, so Mr. So the Vice Minister, so he is collected, Mr. Torabayev.
But let me check. Yeah, I'm checking because 2 Akimats are connected, ministries are connected.
Yeah, but
only moderator, she's now facing a little bit technical problems, but Sergey is helping her.
Yeah, but Mr. Kairat Torabayev, because he will deliver the welcome remarks. So can you kindly check?
Let me call him just a second, because you know we called him several times and he was ready.
Okay. So,
just a second, yeah.
Okay, once he's ready, then we will start.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, then let's start. Good afternoon from Manila to everyone, distinguished participants, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to the virtual regional workshop on assessing economic corridor development potential among Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. So we are very pleased to co-organize this workshop with the government of Kazakhstan. So my name is Shinan Hu, and I'm the project team leader of this ADB technical assistance. So today I will facilitate the workshop. And my colleague, Mr. Saad Paracha, the CAREC unit head of ADB, will back up in case of my internet disruptions. So prior to the workshop, we have shared with you the Zoom usage guide for you to get familiarized with its functions. And just now, my colleague Irene also showing you how to use the function. So, but if you still have difficulty with some functions, you may kindly type your message in the chat box, and our support team will help you. Without further ado, let me invite Mr. Safdar Parvez, Director of the Regional Cooperation and Operations Coordination Division of Central West and Asia Department of ADB, to deliver welcome remarks. So, Mr. Parvez, please.
Thank you, Shinglin. And good afternoon, colleagues from Manila. We hope that you and your families are all well in these difficult and uncertain times. We are very grateful that despite the difficulties, you have made the time to participate and attend this, what we feel is an important workshop to take forward some of the work on this trilateral economic corridor development that we have been working on. I'm very pleased today that this second regional workshop, the first one was held in Tashkent in December 2019. And of course, at that time, we were able to meet physically and travel to Tashkent and invite all of you there for the meeting. And today we are very pleased that the government of Kazakhstan is co-hosting or co-chairing this workshop with us today, this second regional workshop. We're very pleased that Mr. Torabayev, Vice Minister for Trade and Integration, Government of Kazakhstan, could join the meeting. And we are also very pleased that Mr. Vafayev, Deputy Minister for Investment and Trade, and Mr. Abdurrahman Monzoda, Deputy Minister for Economic Development and Trade of the Government of Tajikistan, are also expected to join the workshop today. In addition, we have senior level representation from the Akimats and Mr. Ebek Satibayev, Deputy Akim of Shymkent City, Mr. Mirzalov, Deputy Akim of Turkestan, and Mr. Anbar Yakubi, Deputy Chairman of Sogat Blast, are all expected to be here today. And besides that, we have very rich representation from the various ministries, agencies, departments, and the private sector at this workshop today. So very warm welcome to all of you, and we are really looking forward to an interactive discussion with all of you today, this morning. I think the first thing I would like to say is that for us, the fact that COVID-19 interrupted trade and industry in many of our CAREC member countries has only served to reinforce the real importance of regional cooperation and countries reopening borders and forging even closer economic and trade ties for the mutual prosperity of the region. And so the need for regional cooperation has never been stronger than it is today. And we are very pleased that it was in October 2018 that the Asian Development Bank committed $800,000 in grant money in order to conceptualize this trilateral corridor between Shymkent, Tashkent, and Khujand, and covering the oblasts of Turkestan, Tashkent, and Sugud. Over this period, and particularly after the workshop in December 2019, the team was given the mandate to prepare a roadmap for the economic corridor development, which they have now done. And one of the main purposes of the meeting today is to share with you the draft roadmap in order to get your views and your suggestions, and to discuss next steps on this issue, and also very importantly to discuss ways in which we can institutionalize and mainstream the work of this corridor going forward. The guidance that we got from the last regional meeting and the 6 pillars based on which this corridor should be developed. The 6 pillars being first, the improvement of road and railway networks. Second is the modernization of border crossing points. Third is the development of horticulture value chains. And fourth is the modernization of the sanitary, phytosanitary systems and food quality certifications. Fifth was the regional tourism. And sixth was the development of special economic zones and industrial zones. They are all featured in the roadmap that you would see discussed today. We are very pleased that we have a very senior team of consultants led by Mr. Baudir Ganiev, who has led the work on the preparation of the vision and the detailed roadmap for this meeting. Let me also tell you that an important purpose of the meeting today is to discuss how we can continue and maintain momentum in the work of this corridor going forward, because the purpose of the TA that we had conceived initially in 2018 was really to prepare this roadmap. But then how do we go ahead and implement it? And what kind of institutional setup will be important? So for this purpose, we are trying in the Asian Development Bank to mobilize another $1 million of support in order to continue assistance for this very important corridor, very strategic corridor, which we feel can bring substantial prosperity to the 3 countries, and particularly in the areas from where this corridor would pass. So I think with these remarks, I'm once again very happy and pleased to welcome you today, and we are looking forward to substantial discussions in the workshop today. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Safdar, for your welcome remarks. So may I now have the honor to invite Mr. Kairat Turabayev, Vice Minister of Trade and Integration of Kazakhstan, to give his welcome remarks. So Mr. Turabayev, the floor is yours.
And, thank you. Thank you. Well, I think there is some issue with my camera. Yep. It doesn't show up. Okay, no worries. First of all, прежде всего, позвольте, уважаемый господин Парвез.
First of all, dear Mr. Parvez, let me acknowledge the organization of this event, and also on behalf of the National Focal Point, the Minister of National Economy, let me greet all of the participants of this workshop that is hosted, that is held for the assessment of the evaluation of the potential of the economic corridor development. And I would like to specifically thank the Asian Development Bank and our Uzbek and Tajik colleagues for their participation in today's meeting. And I would like to start with the description of the economic corridors. The economic corridor is a complex of interconnected infrastructure objects for the purpose of political and economic development, and these are a complex set of interconnected markets that can be also related and going beyond the regional markets. Last year, the Asian Development Bank has proposed an initiative to establish a new economic corridor among Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan for further integration of the CAREC member countries. So this economic corridor will also include the Sugd, Tashkent, and Turkestan oblasts. The ADB has selected these regions because of their positive dynamics of development of their relationships in the region. And the total population is of these oblasts is around 15% of the total population of Central Asia. Shymkent is on the crossroads between East Asia, Europe, and Russia. And Khujand is the hub, tourist hub, and also agriculture is developing. This oblast is developing actively, and there is also active movement of labor force. And it also contributes a lot to the development of the economic corridor. In 2018, Shymkent has been announced the city of national significance, in line as just like Almaty and Astana. And we're expecting that the national policies and strategies will create new prospects for the development of the southern part of Kazakhstan. And also would like to emphasize that the Republic of Kazakhstan emphasizes greatly the importance of regional initiatives in the CAREC region and supports the initiatives of the CAREC. And I hope that the new initiative of the ADB will help us recover from the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemics. And today, based on the consultations of the ADB, we have prepared the roadmap for the development of this economic corridor, and we are planning to discuss the three main objectives. First, to discuss the draft roadmap. Second, to outline our next steps. And third, to agree on the institutional structure. In conclusion, let me thank once again the governments of the republics of Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, as well as the Asian Development Bank for the support and assistance in holding this important workshop. And also I would like to wish all of you fruitful discussion today. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Torabayev, for your welcome remarks. May I now invite Mr. Saad Paracha, the CAREC unit head of ADB, to introduce the agenda of the workshop. So, Mr. Paracha, the floor is yours. Hello.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Saad. I have recently started working, looking after the CAREC Secretariat. I'm very pleased to be part of this discussion and very pleased to meet you today. So in terms of the agenda, thank you for the opening remarks and going forward during the first session, the discussion will focus on the roadmap of Shymkent, Tashkent, Khujand economic corridor development. This will mainly present the draft roadmap which has been put together for the STKEC development, the geographic focus, trade potential, and will also cover some of the thematic areas, identify some of the issues and plans and how these issues can be addressed. Next, from this session, a main presentation will be from Mr. Baudir and Mr. Roman, who are ADB consultants, and then we will be requesting feedback from the countries joining the meeting today, followed by open discussion. After that, the second session will mainly discuss the proposed next steps of the STKEC development, including some activities that are being proposed for the development based on the recommendations of the roadmap. It will also identify further studies on selected focus areas, identify knowledge sharing, cross-learning activities, and some best practices of corridor development that we would like to introduce to the member countries. Main presentation will be done by Ms. Xinglan Hu. She's the team leader for this program from ADB. And then obviously countries will have opportunity for discussion and feedback and open discussion. And then finally, the third session will discuss the preparation for the institutional setup on how all these aspects of development will be put together and supported through an institutional arrangement. And basically it will discuss key steps and timeline going forward for establishing the proposed setup, establishment of a steering committee, and then signing of a MOU among the three countries. And with that, we will hopefully come to a good understanding and conclusion of the session. And I wish you all a fruitful discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Saad, for the very clear and comprehensive introduction of the agenda. We will now start session one, which I will moderate. Since Mr. Paracha has already introduced the agenda, I don't have much to say on the agenda per se. What I would like to highlight is that this roadmap is actually very much country-driven. So the six thematic focus areas that we have proposed actually are the results of our intensive consultations with the countries during our inception missions and our field work. And we have also seen that the countries themselves, they actually have a lot of interest in developing projects within these corridor areas. So it's really very much country-driven program, and so with ADB, so we are really very happy to support. So in the interest of time, now I will directly ask our consultants, Mr. Bahodir Galiev and Mr. Roman Mogilevsky, to start the presentation. So Bahodir and Roman, the floor are yours.
Thank you very much, Shinlan. I will start. Добрый день, уважаемые участники. Меня зовут Роман Могилевский.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My name is Roman Mogilevsky. Let me present the roadmap for the development of the economic corridor between Shymkent, Tashkent, and Khujand to you, as well as the neighboring oblasts. And we would like to introduce the logics and potential directions of this development. Next slide, please. So I will just briefly describe the outline of this presentation. At the beginning, we will discuss the geographical focus of this corridor, what will be covered by the corridor. Then we will discuss the opportunities for increasing the cross-border economic cooperation and integration in the STKEC region. And also, most of the time will be focused on the discussion of the proposed thematic focus areas for potential cooperation in the corridor development area. And then we will also discuss the planned or proposed actions for the implementation of this roadmap. And we also proposing institutional setup for the development of the economic corridor, and the majority of the discussion will be focused on session 3. Next slide, please. So, as regards to the geographic focus of the economic corridor development, formally, at the very beginning of our analysis, we focus on the Turkestan Oblast and the city of Shymkent in Kazakhstan, the Tashkent Oblast and the city of Tashkent in Uzbekistan, and the Sugd Oblast and the city of Khujand in Tajikistan. These are all neighboring oblasts, and they are closely interconnected historically and economically, with very tight relations. And it is a quite logical step to increase the volume of economic cooperation in this area, in this particular area. And we don't want to make an impression that this interconnection, that these relationships will be limited. And if necessary, this will be extended to the neighboring areas of Fergana Valley, including Kyrgyz and Uzbek parts of this valley. And if there will be a need to cover some parts of Samarkand, we will do so. And it will also be considered an opportunity of connecting this corridor to another corridor, specifically the corridor between the cities of Almaty and Bishkek in the region. Next slide, please. If we speak about the international trade in the region on this slide, you can see the overall trade in the region with the rest of the world, not only among each other. So they do not produce too many products. Those are mostly energy products, ores, and also light industry products, and a little bit of something else, other goods. And the concentration is quite high. But as far as imports are concerned, the specific nature of this corridor is that they do not only import something that is necessary to supply for their own needs. For example, the city of Tashkent and the Sugd Oblast, they are sort of national import hubs. They receive imports and then redistribute imports inside of their countries based on various reasons. And we need to understand that not all of the trade in our region is some part of our regional trade is transit trade. Specifically, the southern part of Uzbekistan, it receives most of its trades of its products from Tashkent, and the majority of products goes through Khujand and the railway that goes via Khujand. Next slide, please. Well, if we speak about trade within the region among cities and oblasts of this region, we can say that the volume of trade is not that big. It is relatively small, and in Kazakhstan, these are tens of billions of export, and in Tashkent as well. But if we speak about this region, we can only speak about hundreds of millions of US dollars worth of trade. And we can see the difference between 2015 and 2018. We can even see the decrease in the volume of trade, unfortunately. And the biggest volume of trade is among Tashkent and Tashkent Oblast with the neighboring regions in Kazakhstan, as well as between we can see that the volume of trade between Tashkent and the Sugd Oblast is quite small. Next slide, please. So there is a room for further development. Thank you. So what are the products that are traded between regions and cities? We can see that different regions supply different products, the majority of which is one product is the zinc concentrate that is supplied from Sugd Oblast to Tashkent Oblast. They have plants to process this ore. And as regards the other products, these are vegetables and fruits, mostly coming from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan to Kazakhstan. And from Kazakhstan, they bring wheat grain and flour to Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. As regards machinery and equipment, their share is not quite big. Next slide, please. What are the opportunities available for increasing the trade inside of the region? Well, from our point of view, they are quite various. First of all, the markets themselves will grow, and their absorption capacity will grow as well. And second, as it has already been mentioned, the current volume of trade is quite small, which is unfortunate, but it also means that there is a big room for further growth. Third, Even though it may seem that these regions produce similar products, it does not rule out the possibility of their trade between among these regions. For example, if we speak about trade in tourist services, Kazakhstan can sell tourist services to Uzbekistan, and Kazakh tourists will be happy to visit Tashkent, Samarkand, and other cities and sites in Uzbekistan. So within the same sector, even within the same sector, there are opportunities for further growth of trade. And also we need to say that the new export products are about to come. Please skip previous slide, please. And we can speak about appearance of new export products, specifically in agriculture and in products with higher value and the processing industry products. And also, well, I'm working from home, and so you can see some noise in the background. Next, the next area and the next opportunities for development is the underdeveloped capacity of trade in services, as I have already said about tourism. It is quite natural for tourists from various countries to study in neighboring countries or to receive healthcare services in other countries. And also there is a quite big volume of transit trade in the region. So we need to develop the related infrastructure and the institutional basis for this transit trade coming through Tashkent, Shymkent, and Khujand to be as smooth as possible.
Now, as far as the opportunities for broader-based cooperation is concerned, not only trade, the first thing I have to say is that the region should be considered as a laboratory for the development of export products. For instance, we want to develop some new products that we didn't produce in the past for any. It is going to be difficult. We understand that, for instance, the apricot from Tajikistan is fantastic. We know that, but the people in the faraway markets don't know about that. We will have to convince them. This will require resources and time. Selling it here, well, okay, apricot is the old product. It's not something new, but let's say another new product from Tajikistan will be sold in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, no problems. As soon as the technology is tried and tested, as soon as we understand what are the requirements of the consumers, when the marketing arrangements are developed, when this lab experiment is completed, then we can expand our export activities and enter other faraway regions. So the development of trade inside the region will support the penetration of further away markets. There is no contradiction here. Secondly, it's the development of regional value chains. In other words, we don't have to import everything from far away again, or we don't have to export anything far away because we have wonderful schemes for complementarity inside the region. And for instance, we can produce it here, process it there, get it certified in the third place, then package it in the fourth place. The way it works around the world, it can also work in the region. And the pandemic has taught us, unfortunately, that the value chains that are involving long transportation are vulnerable. That means that the shorter geographically is the value chain, the more reliable it is, and the more economically effective can be the outcome. Furthermore, another major area for cooperation, that's not trade, by the way, this is more of joint investment and institutional cooperation in a number of areas that we call regional public goods. This is something that is not profitable to do on your own. It's much more profitable to do it when you join efforts with someone else. For instance, we all know the problems of laboratory certification processes for agribusiness, and not only for agricultural products, also for other products. If we could agree, if we could establish a joint network of that kind, a joint network of centers, then some goods produced in Kazakhstan, for instance, would be much more beneficial to be certified, for instance, in Uzbekistan, simply because it's closer, because it's cheaper, you invest only once, and then you reap the benefits. Of course, that's going to require mutual recognition of procedures, legislation, etc., etc. It's a long way ahead of us, but in principle, opportunities are there, and there is also an opportunity for savings. The same thing applies to the development of organic products. The same applies to the development of professional education and businessman training in prospective export areas and sectors. Tourism, of course, regional cooperation in this area is a must. Maybe this is something that would probably be easiest to start. This list is just for illustration. Of course, there are plenty of other spheres where such cooperation can take place. Thank you for this. And now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Ganiev.
Do you hear me?
Hey, Barodia, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now? Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Roman, for the presentation. Good morning and good day, all the participants of the workshop. I do apologize for a small technical hiccup. I forgot to switch on the microphone. So I would like to use the remaining time to cover some of the remaining items of our presentation with Roman. I'd like to tell you about the priority thematic areas for the development of the economic corridor, Shymkent, Tashkent, Khujand, and the planned or proposed measures and activities aimed at the development of this corridor. As far as institutional mechanisms are concerned, I suppose we will cover that in greater detail during the third session of our today's workshop. As it has already been mentioned by Xinlan, this list of thematic areas and the planned or proposed measures and activities that I would like to go over very briefly are fully based on the ideas, plans, and suggestions that were provided by the participants of various discussions and fora that we have had over the last 14 months. This includes priorities of central and local authorities of the three countries, suggestions and remarks from the business representatives from the three countries, and plans and suggestions from international organizations and other organizations that offer assistance in the area of development. Based on these consultations, we have drafted this list of priority areas that includes improving road and railway connectivity within this economic corridor, modernization of border crossing points and border management, development of value chains in horticulture, modernization of sanitary and phytosanitary measures, and the development of services on the certification of food products, the development of regional tourism, and the development of special economic zones and industrial zones. For each of these areas, during the consultations and during the research, we have tried to define what are the problems that we are currently facing, what are the opportunities to deepen the mutually beneficial cooperation within this economic corridor, and what are the opportunities to solve problems. Based on the plans of local and central authorities based on their wishes and suggestions, and also based on the suggestions of other stakeholders for each of the thematic areas. We have drafted a list of planned activities. Some activities are already underway, and also the measures that are only being suggested at the moment.
Who's controlling the slides?
Change slide.
Can everyone see the slides?
Yes, Bahadir.
Can you hear the slides?
Yes, we can see the slides.
Okay. Значит, all right, good. Значит, по направлению, значит, в сфере улучшения сказано.
So in the area of transport connectivity in the region, it is suggested to concentrate on the road transport and on the railways, because these are the two modes of transport that are accountable for the bulk of all transportation inside the region and also between the region and the rest of the world. So to improve road transport connectivity in the region, it is suggested to rehabilitate or upgrade the existing roads that are important to external and internal connectivity of the region. In particular, it is suggested to rehabilitate the road from Khujand to Kasht. This is a very important road that links together the administrative center of the Sukt province with the northern part of the country, and it is very important for internal and for internal economic development of the Sukt province. It is also suggested to construct new roads and roadside facilities and infrastructure to promote the growth of trade and tourism and the movement of people inside the region, in particular in Turkestan province. It is suggested to build a road around Saragach. In Tashkent, it is suggested to build a bypass road or a ring road around the city of Churchi. It is also suggested to improve the operation and maintenance of the roads, to introduce intelligent transport systems with automated wait in motion stations. They're being used in some countries of the region, in particular in Kazakhstan, but due to the fact that we have different standards, these systems are not always synchronized, and this is why we have some problems with operating these systems in the other countries. Another major obstacle for economic integration and cooperation within this economic corridor are permits for trucks and buses. According to bilateral agreements between these countries, there are certain restrictions and limitations. And in fact, these restrictions and limitations, in certain cases, according to the information that we currently have, there are quotas, and sometimes these quotas are insufficient, according to the data that we have. And that means that these restrictions for the entry of vehicles and conveyances affect trade. Therefore, we would like to suggest to replace the quotas with simple payments and replace quotas in trade with quotas for tariffs. Another important limitation, significant limitation for the integration inside the region, as we remember from the information that was provided to us by the participants of foreign trade and the enterprises involved in transportation, are the differences in national standards of road transport, in particular, different requirements for axle load of the vehicles. And this is why it is suggested, at least in the midterm, to harmonize these standards so that trucks would have an easier time moving across the region and crossing borders, both inside the region and when involved in international transportation. The speaker is breaking off. In railway transportation, there is also a number of problems, a number of restrictions for operations, in particular, the railway infrastructure, although it is quite wide and well developed, it still has a lot of disadvantages because there are some railway tracks that are in poor condition. This is why it is suggested to rehabilitate and modernize the infrastructure, in particular the railway tracks, by their electrification and by installing modern signaling systems. Kazakhstan, as far as we know, is currently conducting a study, or they're preparing a feasibility study for the possible construction of a super high-speed railway that is supposed to connect Turkestan with Shymkent and then on to Tashkent. If this feasibility study comes to the conclusion that this railway is worth building from the economic and the financial point of view, then it is suggested to include in the implementation of this corridor. It is also suggested to conduct a feasibility study or an economic study for the possibility to construct a railway link that would connect south and north of Suks province. It is also suggested to use this road and to apply information and communication technologies along this road, including the radio frequency identification technology. An important obstacle for cargo transportation inside the region is the big difference between tariffs for railway transportation inside the country for export and import, and the tariffs for transit. Although the difference between these two types of tariffs has been reduced recently, still, according to the information that we have been provided by the traders, the difference is still large, and it is a major obstacle for integration in the region. Therefore, it is suggested to gradually reduce this difference between the different railway tariffs. On the one hand, it's transit transportation, and on the other hand, it's internal and export transportation. Now, in the area of modernization of border crossing points and border management, the main objective of the planned or suggested actions is to reduce costs, both time costs and the financial costs associated with border crossing. The government of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan realize and recognize that there are problems in this area. Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan have already agreed a roadmap, and they're implementing a roadmap to modernize the border crossing points between the two countries. Modernization of some border crossing points has already been completed or underway. It is suggested within the framework of this economic corridor, Shymkent, Tashkent, Khujand, to complete the modernization of these border crossing points and also modernize BCPs, at least major BCPs, between Tashkent and Kursk provinces, so that the through traffic through the region would not suffer from any major delays at border crossings. It is also very important to modernize the infrastructure at the borders and improve the processes and procedures of border crossing. We should also improve the technologies that are being used in the process. In particular, it is suggested to create single window facilities, electronic single windows for all foreign economic relations at all border crossing points in the region. If possible, we would need to make sure that they're all interrelated, they can all exchange information. It is also suggested to reduce the over-reliance, again, breaking off the speaker. The interpreter does not hear the speaker. The sound is lost. To reduce costs at border crossings, and also to reduce costs associated with the movement of cargoes across the region, it is suggested to implement modern customs transit systems, including the ETIR system, the ATA CARNET system, and the system which had been developed and suggested within the framework of the CAREC program. That's the CAREC Advanced Transit System and Integrated Common Exchange. In the midterm and in the long term, the countries of the region could consider the implementation of a joint control system at the border crossing points. In particular, joint customs control, transport control, and sanitary and phytosanitary control. One example of this kind is the experience of joint customs control between China and Mongolia. This experience was described in the draft roadmap. As far as the development of horticulture value chains is concerned, it is suggested to rehabilitate and modernize irrigation infrastructure in the three countries along the corridor. Lack of water is a major problem in all provinces, especially in some of them. It is also suggested to use new irrigation technologies. It is suggested to support the development of cooperatives and clusters in the area of horticulture to achieve economies of scale and strengthen horticulture-related research and development, as well as export, promotion, and extension services.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Hi, Bahadir. I think your time is up. Can you just speed up your presentation? Thank you.
It is also suggested to create agro-logistics centers and electronic systems for the sale and purchase of goods and products for horticulture. Well, due to time limitation, I will not go into each of the remaining items because we have attempted to include all this in the roadmap And I think that the participants of the workshop had the opportunity to take a look at these planned activities. And the main purpose of our presentation at this workshop was not to really provide the information in its totality, but to receive your responses, your feedback, your suggestions. Whether you think that this selection of suggested actions is worth being worked on in the future, whether anything needs to be changed or adjusted. I suppose this is where I will end my presentation.
Thank you, Bahudir and Roman, for your presentation. I understand that there's a lot to present, but it's really due to the time constraint. We have to cut short your presentation. Now, I would like to invite the designated speakers from our countries to share their views. May I first invite Mr. Aybek Satibayev, Deputy Akimat of Shymkent City of Kazakhstan, to share his views. Mr. Satibayev, please.
Thank you very much. Құрметті ханымдар мен мырзалар, уважаемые участники виртуального семинара.
Dear participants of this virtual workshop, people say you select friends, then you obtain enemies, but neighbors are given by God. Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Tajikistan are linked by common culture and ancient links. Our countries are strategic partners in a number of areas, and the relations between our countries are exclusively friendly and trusting. Our heads of states regularly note the positive dynamics in the foreign trade between our countries. Dear participants of the workshop, today we are laying a very strong foundation for the economic and business cooperation between our brotherly countries. As you know, by a historical decree of Yilbasi Nazarbayev of June 19, 2018, the South Kazakhstan province was turned into the Turkestan province, and the city of Shymkent received the status of the third megapolis in the country. Overall, we're involved in active works aimed at the creation of a favorable investment climate at the regional level. In the region, we have created all the necessary conditions for successful implementation of investment projects. We have constructed an effective system of regional development institutions, the main purpose of which is to attract investments and to support these investments from the idea to the launch of the project and to export. As a result, from the beginning of the year, despite the pandemic, the volume of investments attracted to the city of Shymkent reached 130 billion tenge, and we are now the leading region in the country. At the same time, more than half of these investments have been invested by small enterprises. That's more than 60%. In Shymkent, we have 2 industrial zones that are operating successfully. Next year, we're planning to commission a 3rd industrial zone with an area of 300 hectares and an agro-industrial area with an area of 126 hectares, where the land plots are being provided with ready infrastructure. At the same time, to develop the textile and the oil and petrochemicals industries, we have a special economic zone, and the participants in this special economic zone are given land with infrastructure, and they are fully relieved of major taxes. At the same time, I'd like to note that more than 1,000 enterprises that are located in these special zones are cooperating successfully with businessmen from Tajikistan and Uzbekistan in the areas of trade, industry, agriculture, construction, and the production of construction materials. Dear participants of this virtual forum, today, as you know, the threat of global food insecurity is one of the major challenges that we could address jointly. The high growth rates of the global population exacerbates the problem with the food around the world. And this is a great opportunity for us in this challenge. We have the favorable climate, and our region has a huge potential in opening up joint activities and enterprises in the agri-industrial complex and enter new markets to create the infrastructure that would make it possible to ensure long-term storage, processing, sorting, and packing of products in our country. We are working on the establishment of a network of transport and logistics centers. The center located in Shymkent is currently implementing 6 projects to a total of 33 billion tenge. We believe that the implementation of these projects will create momentum for the activization of bilateral trade between our countries. The border location of the city of Shymkent and the historically close relations promote the active development of cooperation with the regions of Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. In this connection, great attention is being paid by the city to the roads and the expansion of the transit potential of our city. Total length of roads of the city is 2,976 kilometers. In 2020, the budget for the development of the roads for maintenance and construction of about 415 kilometers, we've allocated 25.7 billion tenge. Major projects cover all areas of the city and the directions to Turkestan, Tashkent, and Almaty. Construction will go on up until 2023, and we will commission new roads with high throughput capacity of the traffic in line with the modern requirements. Today, we are constructing a new avenue towards Tashkent. This is the extension of the Konaev Avenue, and we're actively building this due to private investments. We're building the new passenger terminal of the Shymkent city that will be commissioned next year in 2021. Dear friends, our region, with its unique natural resources and unique culture, has great capacity for the development of tourism, great potential for tourism development at the international and regional level. In this connection, taking advantage of this opportunity, I would like to invite you to visit our region, to come to us to develop mutually beneficial cooperation, skiing, child tourism, health improvement tourism. The Central Asian region has a unique tourism resources, and it has a great capacity and potential for the development of the sphere of the economy, and it has all the chances to become a part of the national treasure of our countries. In 2019, the Department of Tourism in Shymkent arranged a workshop with the involvement of the representatives of tourism business from the neighboring countries.
And participants of this tour, they have discussed different specialties of their countries and tourist sites. And at the end of this tour, the representatives of the business tourism industries of the 4 countries, so they have developed a 30-day route, tourism route, and they also decided to develop the tourism program, the tourism development program in this region. Overall, we have already raised issues, and we have already proposed our different initiatives for the development of tourism in our region, and we also would like to ask you to consider our proposals in the development of the Regional Economic Development Program. Dear colleagues and friends, given the huge economic capacity of our countries, I find it reasonable to keep on working on the development of cross-border development under the CAREC 2030 strategy, with a view to strengthen the sustainable development of the Central Asian countries. And we also support, on our behalf, we support the initiative of the development of this economic corridor between 3 countries. And we also believe that this workshop will give an impetus to the development of this program and this economic corridor, and will also contribute a lot to the future well-being of our countries. We have listened carefully to the proposed activities for the development of this roadmap, and we believe that we will need to elaborate on it in detail. And overall, we support this roadmap. Thank you for attention. Good luck to you all. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Satibayev. May I now invite Mr. Abdullah Kashimov, Head of Department of Transport, Corridors and Logistics Development of Ministry of Investment and Foreign Trade, Uzbekistan, to share his views. Mr. Kashimov, please.
Thank you very much. Dear ladies and gentlemen, let me greet you on this platform of this trilateral meeting, and would like to express the words of appreciation to the Asian Development Bank and Sardar Parvez specifically, as well as the leadership of the Ministry of Trade of Kazakhstan, Mr. Kairat Tulibayev, the Vice Minister, for this initiative and the organization, perfect organization of this workshop. We have reviewed carefully the materials prepared by the ADB's consultants and the analysis and the evaluation of the potential and prospects of development of the economic corridor. And I would like to say that this document has been prepared on a very high quality level, and I would like to emphasize the 6 pillars that have been discussed in detail by Mr. Parvez and Mr. Satabayev. And I also, well, for the sake of time, I will not talk too much about these 6 pillars. I would like to say that the pandemics caused by the COVID-19 has had a deadly impact on the area of transportation sector, and we have sustained losses in the transportation sector as well because of the closure of some of the transport corridors, and our import and export operations between our countries have also been limited. So I agree with Mr. Mogilevsky, the ADB consultants, who told that we need to review the concept and the strategy, and we also would have to focus more on the control along this economic corridor. Just as an example, I would like to say that over the period from January through August, the share of Kazakhstan in exports to Uzbekistan of fresh products from Uzbekistan has reached 29%. It was over $100 million, and it means that Kazakhstan, just like Kyrgyzstan and Afghanistan, can have a big role to play in the areas of conventional areas of trade, such as the area of agricultural products, and also in other areas such as manufacturing of higher value products. And also going forward, we will need to overcome these obstacles, and we will also need to recover from the pandemic impact. So I would like to emphasize some of the components of the program that lies ahead of us. In this analysis, this analysis is focused a lot on improvement of the transportation. We, in our turn, would like to say that we need to focus on the principles and details of ensuring connectivity, better connectivity among these regions, both transport and communication connectivity. We will also need to improve technology, implementation of technologies along the sections that have the biggest load in terms of transportation, and serve for the purpose of increasing the regional trade. And also believe that in this case, each of the 3 countries will need to propose their investment projects for the next 4 years, along with the ADB, to identify the indicators of connectivity as some of the priorities, and to prioritize the reconstruction and rehabilitation of roads and railways. So I hope that these proposals will also be supported by the transportation agencies as well. And another priority is the improvement of border crossing points. More than 30% of our time in transportation is wasted at border crossing points. For example, Uzbekistan may be the world's top country in terms of physical and non-physical barriers in transportation of products, because we are double landlocked country, and it is very important. In this regard, it is very important for us, specifically in cooperation with the Sugd Oblast of Tajikistan and Shymkent Oblast of and Almaty Oblast of Kazakhstan, to harmonize the legal and regulatory frameworks and focus our efforts on the border crossing points among Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan at Yalauma border crossing point, Navai, Jima, Aybek, with a view to improve situation and upgrade equipment of border crossing points, to install new high-quality scanners, so that we do not waste time during transportation at these border crossing points. Especially given the ongoing pandemic situations, we will also need to install special tunnels and special screens to check drivers for the infection. So we will need to ask the Asian Development Bank for their support in providing these border crossing points with the necessary equipment for scanning drivers and passengers for COVID-19, so that we can prevent the infection from spreading. Another priority is the improvement and increase in production of higher value products in agriculture, because this is very important to us in Uzbekistan, because most of our population, they live in rural areas. And in the nearest years, we are planning to produce up to 22 million tons of agricultural produce. And we will also need to increase our processing facilities as well. So I would like to support the proposals made by my colleagues before me regarding the need to focus on the clusters and priority directions of producing agricultural of highest value, such as grains, fruit and vegetables. You all know well that in recent years in our region, there were a lot of different pests were brought to our region. There is a noise in the background, and so there is also a big need for increasing the efforts to improve quarantine measures, and as well as the sanitary and phytosanitary measures, as well as to train personnel and to exchange information on a timely basis. And it has been mentioned by Mr. Zatabayev regarding the importance of tourism. Of course, Tashkent, Turkestan, and Sugd oblasts are quite famous in the world as centers of global civilization. So every building, every site is of high tourism value, and there is also a very big capacity that we have in this area. Of course, at this point in time, nobody will come to any of the countries to visit just one city or just one tourist site. So we will need to work on the development of tourist routes that would cover several regions or several countries in Shymkent or Tashkent. For example, in Tashkent Oblast, there are more than 44 tourist sites alone. And in Sugd Oblast, there are also just as many tourist sites. For example, in Khujand, there are hundreds of tourism sites. And for example, one of the world's first astronomers, practical astronomers, he is a world famous astronomer. He originated from Khujand. So it is very important to us to focus on these layers of tourism that would cover various cultural aspects of tourism. So we also see a very big capacity, a very big potential in this. And the last priority is the exchange of experience and best practices among industrial and economic zones. And we also would like to support this initiative as well. We have more than 25 different packages of initiatives for the development of our economic zones. And we also are planning to promote investment and high technology into the development of these areas. And we will also need to make sure that we can promote investment on very high concessional conditions. And I also would like to say that there is a very big role to play for the ADB in terms of provision of equipment or provision of loans or grant assistance to push the development of this corridor and to showcase how we can make it within a very short period of time based on the high capacity of the Asian Development Bank and high potential of these three regions. We can reach the common success and to improve the well-being of the population in these regions so that in the future we'll be able to extend this corridor and we will be able to cover additional regions, and we'll be able, maybe in 2024, 2025, we will be able to extend this corridor to the city of Osh in Kyrgyzstan. This will be a very good corridor in that case, because over 20% of the population of Uzbekistan live in Fergana Valley, and this corridor, the extension of this corridor, will also cover this region as well. And also would like to say in conclusion that we will also need to refine these proposals. We will also need to identify the target indicators and the implementation agencies as well. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kashimov, for your very comprehensive review of this roadmap. And I see that Mr. Iskulov raised his hand. He would like to provide a very short intervention. So, Mr. Iskulov, please, but please kindly keep your intervention short. We're running out of time. Thank you.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I am happy to see all of you, dear colleagues and friends. I am the head of the Department of Tourism of Uzbekistan, and we fully support this project that has been launched recently. This is a very important project, and our Kazakh partners have already raised an importance of creating the Council for Tourism. We support this proposal, and we are ready to participate in this council. And in the survey, the survey focused the importance of transportation and border crossing points, which are of fundamental importance for tourism and transportation, because any delays in transportation of tourists, it creates difficulties because tourists cannot reach their destinations as fast as they want. And given the pandemic situation all over the world, in the area of tourism, we have already lost the losses. The global losses are over 120 million jobs and more than $1 trillion all over the world. And this similar situation is in the countries as well, specifically in the Central Asian countries. Last year, Uzbekistan was visited by 6.7 million of foreign tourists, half of which came from Tajikistan and Kazakhstan. Tajikistan because these are our neighbor countries. And upon this workshop today, well, by today we have only reached. We actually expected the increase of our tourists by 1 million by the end of this year, but we have actually witnessed a very significant decrease the tourist flow. So I believe that within the program of CAREC, we will need to adjust our tourism development program because we believe that the recovery of the tourism sector will take 2 years at least, based on the global analysis. So I would like to suggest you to adjust the tourism development program. $1 invested into the tourism sector generates $5 to $6 of additional value in terms of jobs, in terms of general overall additional products. So the tourism sector in Uzbekistan is a very important sector for Uzbekistan. So I would like to call upon all of our colleagues and friends to work collectively towards this. And also, it was not mentioned in your report, Uzbekistan has established the University of Great Silk Road, and we are inviting our colleagues to study at this university. There are different programs in the tourism area, and we also have different colleges and universities across countries, specifically in Samarkand, that neighbors Tajikistan, and also in Shymkent. We have at least 4 colleges that train professional tourism staff. And so we invite youth from the neighbor countries to come to our universities, to enter our universities and colleges, and to become specialists in the tourism sector. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Iskulov. Now, may I invite Mr. Zuhruddin Kanjayev, Head of the Main Department of Trade Policy and Consumer Market, Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, Tajikistan, to share his views. Mr. Kanjayev, please. Given our time constraint, I would request you kindly to limit your intervention within 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, dear participants of this workshop. And thanks for having me at this workshop for the evaluation of the potential of development of economic corridor between Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. I would like to wish all of you good health and fruitful discussion. In 2020, because of the COVID-19 pandemic situation, we have witnessed a considerable crisis in the global economy, and most of the countries of the world, including Tajikistan, have had to take measures to prevent this pandemic situation, the spread of the infection. But despite all of these measures, many of the countries across the world could not avoid the spread of this infection, which resulted in the decrease in the economic activity and the decrease of their economic growth as well. This affected Tajikistan and our major trade partners. And over the period from January to July, our performance indicators have decreased considerably. 3.5, they are now 3.5% less than last year. And dear participants, despite of the ongoing problems, the Republic of Tajikistan keeps pursuing its reforms in accordance with the international standards. And we are also placing special emphasis on the development of economic high-value manufacturing and other sectors of economy. And we also believe that the economic corridor will also become a good source for the development of the involved regions. Development of this regional economic corridor becomes of high importance, specifically because it provides an opportunity to Tajikistan to open borders with the neighbor countries. And the evaluation of the trade capacity from the development of this corridor. It creates big opportunities for us to increase our trade with other countries such as Russia and China and other countries. And geographic focus is of very big importance for the development of this economic corridor. I would like to emphasize that along this corridor, more than 15% of the total population of Central Asia, they live along this corridor. More than 30% of the overall trade of Tajikistan, international trade of Tajikistan, it includes the trade with such countries as Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. We need to increase our cooperation with the countries of the region, specifically for another economic region. The border crossing points are of key importance in line with the aligned and harmonized policies and rules, and also it includes the harmonized trade policy and the measures to facilitate trade. Upon accession of Tajikistan into the World Trade Organization, the government of the Republic has adopted the program of the adaptation of adjusting the economy in line with the rules of the WTO. And this program has been implemented 60%, and we have already developed more than 60 various regulations on trade facilitation. We have also ratified the agreement on trade facilitation to facilitate trade. There is a noise in the background, some kids are speaking, and somebody's mic is not muted, and we can hear kids speaking. And we have also established the coordination committee for the trade facilitation with a major capacity, with a major role to facilitate development and standardization of the existing procedures, also to facilitate cooperation of the and partnership between the public sector and private sector, specifically in such areas as customs control, border control, and trade facilitation with a view to reduce the time costs and financial costs on transit of goods, as well as the facilitation of transportation of non-durable goods. We have also established the trade portal of Tajikistan that includes step-by-step instructions for more than 1,500 items of import and export products, and also we also improving the trade statistics of our cooperation with our partners. We are also working on the improvement of our trade portal, as well as on the full-scale operationalization of this portal. I would like to emphasize that the countries of our region have considerable experience in fruitful cooperation, and we not only we have common borders, but we also share culture, and from from the times of the Great Silk Road. And we understand that given the rapidly changing situation in the countries, specifically in the situation of these pandemics, this development of economic corridors will be of key importance. And I would like to say that we will need that without these developments, it will be difficult for us to reach meaningful success. And the insufficient integration into the global economy is caused by weak institutions, weak trade institutions, and weak connectivity. And the countries of the region, they face problems that prevent them from using the immense capacity of the region. First of all, the cross-border regulations and rules, so they create an obstacle, and also we can see that the cross-border trade in the region is quite low as compared to other regions. such as NAFTA or ASEAN. And we also will need improvements in the soft infrastructure, such as logistics, green corridors development, and others. And also like to say that it is very important to note that the lack of investment is also a very big obstacle to the development. And I would like to say that the government of the Republic of Tajikistan works on development, on establishing and developing relationships with other countries of the region. And also, I would like to say that there are a lot of opportunities for further expansion of trade in various products within the region and outside of the region, including food products, textile industry products, chemical products, communications products and services, logistics services, education, as well as quality certification and testing services. And with a view to reach meaningful, fruitful cooperation, we will need to work on the strategy based on the common goals and objectives. I would like to thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kanjayev, for your interventions, and thank you very much for keeping your time. And I think we are running late, but we would like still to open the floor to the audiences for one or two questions or interventions on the roadmap of the economic corridor. So now let's open for the audiences. Please just kindly identify yourself before sharing your views, and given the time constraint, kindly keep your interventions short. Yeah. So I see a hand, Mr. Iskalov. Again, you want to speak again?
Yes, if I may.
Thank you. Yeah. Please, but kindly keep your interventions short. Thank you.
Once again, Shukrat Isakulov, State Tourism Committee. Many conceptual issues that are being raised in the report are important, but I would like us to be able to turn them into something applied. And within the framework of this general plan, we have to be a little bit more specific about the areas of activities and who is supposed to do what in a specific area, with a link to the activities of the ministries, agencies, and responsible governmental and non-governmental entities in the course of the reforms, in the course of preparation for these reforms, etc. Now, we have initiated this issue of the implementation of silk visas together with the Kazakh partners. So Kazakhs, our friends, came forward with an initiative, and this issue has been frozen for some time. It is not being resolved. So let us reinitiate this process within the framework of this project. Let's stipulate the norms whereby the movement of tourists, of international tourists through border crossing points should not take more than 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And for this, green channels, green corridors have to be created, passports that are being produced at specific border crossing points have to automatically be let through, etc., etc. We know many programs of that kind, many concepts of that kind. They're quite vague, they're not applied in nature, but we would like for these programs to be applied, to be practical, and on our behalf, on behalf of Uzbekistan and the State Committee on Tourism, we are prepared to start working on this today. including working with ADB's international consultants, together with consultants and specialists from Kazakhstan and Tajikistan involved in project implementation. We should also include such components as sanitary safety and security, COVID safety. This is a global problem that unfortunately hasn't been reflected in our program documents. This is a new reality that we have to work with. And if each individual country implements its own standards, some sort of certificates, affidavits, medical certificates on the proving the absence of COVID, etc., all this will simply complicate things. So we should have an integrated, common approach to work with our partners. And we'd like to ask the Central Office of ADB for assistance in coordinating the activities with your international experts so that the efficiency of this project to be high. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ikasunov, to raise the important issue of tourism. I think this issue is becoming more important given the COVID context. I think our team, we're sure will incorporate your very constructive comments in the revising the roadmap. Yeah, thank you. So I see that there are no other hands raised. So let me just conclude this session. I think this is a very rich session. The only regret is because of time constraint that just wait a second. I'm sorry. I think I have a request from ABBAT of Tajikistan. Mr. Shokirov would like to speak. Okay, so Mr. Shokirov, please kindly keep your interventions short. Yeah.
Right, thank you very much. I'll try to be brief. First of all, I would like to thank the experts and the consultants that have prepared this for us, that have prepared the roadmap, and we would like to suggest a few suggestions for its implementation. And of course, we have to get used to these virtual meetings, the virtual format of meetings and webinars. And of course, technically and time-wise, we have more restrictions and limitations, and it will be a little bit more difficult to discuss issues. But let me try to put this in a nutshell. Mr. Bahadur Ganeev and Mr. Mogilevsky, in the presentation that they've delivered on the roadmap, told us about the suggested actions and activities. And I think that we need to pay special attention to certain items. Bahadur mentioned the development of special economic and industrial zones. To be completely honest, that word special is not quite clear to me. Why don't we get rid of this word special? We just want to create centers, right? So why don't we simply say the development of economic and industrial zones? I think this word special really doesn't really have any meaning. Therefore, I'd like to suggest that you take this into account, because as far as I understand, these zones imply the construction and the establishment of agricultural, logistical, and other centers. Therefore, I'd like for you to take this into account in the further fine-tuning of this document. As far as the description of the memorandum, because you mentioned that the countries, the participating countries in this project will need to sign some sort of a memorandum. In principle, we could consider signing a memorandum of this kind, and I'd like to echo the suggestion of our colleague from Uzbekistan. You see, in any case, our countries globally have intergovernmental agreements. We have working groups that meet on an annual basis. that monitor the implementation of the relevant activities and the projects that they are involved in. However, the intergovernmental agreements have certain peculiarities. They're signed at the level of ministries and agencies vertically, but horizontally, local self-governance bodies, you know, their opinions are not being taken into account in these intergovernmental agreements. This is why I would like to suggest, and I would like to draw the attention of our consultants to the following. During the development of plans of actions, these issues need to be taken into account so that we could somehow be involved in the committees, in entities and structures, so that we could ensure our participation and our mandates, and we have to clearly understand who's responsible for what. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shokirov. Now we also have a request from Ms. Lena Badibayev. Yes, please kindly make your intervention short. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I would like to say also that we are very grateful for this initiative, and we are better know now the initiatives of Asian Bank of Development as a whole. We really appreciate the document issued by your consultants, and we also already answered in written form through our Kazakh channels here in the country, but I would like to emphasize a couple of things. We are really the corridor established by 3 countries, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Georgia. We are functioning. We worked quite well in the conditions of COVID. And we have also experience with transporting goods, for instance, from European part of our continent to Afghanistan, and vice versa from Uzbekistan to Europe. And we would like to say that from our side, we are open to help in this and would be ready to sit under one table, because we both Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, which is the key parts of Trans-Caspian corridor, suffering that because of the reason that we are too much remoted from the global markets, and we understand the problematic and how it goes to the logistics and costs. And plus, taking into account the part of a big work which started this year, when Kazakhstan is heading the group of developing countries which are remoted and landlocked countries, so-called landlocked 32 countries, we think that there will be for sure even more areas for mutual cooperation and synergy. It's not all the limits. For instance, in our letter, we also mentioned containerization issue, which is quite good window of the opportunity to move instead of, we read the document, thank you. We see the problematic, and the fleet of wagons in some parts are not sufficient, not enough. But there is also big areas to work together. So I really welcome colleagues who hearing me, of course, not taking too much time here, but we think many international activity and cooperation, which all together will be very productive. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for raising the important issue of this transit corridor. So we've also glad to learn the progress of this advanced transit agreement between Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. Okay, now I'll just provide a very quick summary of this session. I think this is so rich, is such a rich session, so that I'm glad to see that the countries, they are overall, they are very positive about this roadmap of the economic corridor. And then we also see that the countries, they are all recognized that this economic corridor has a great potential to generate trade among the 3 countries. and also to improve the economic cooperation and integration among the three countries. And we've also learned that the three countries that have hit hard by the COVID-19. So we have taken note of this special situation, like Mr. Safdar said in his welcome remarks. So we see the great role of the economic corridor in facilitating the countries to restore their economic growth. So we also gladly learned that the government plans and actions in the STKEC region towards building this economic corridor as mentioned by the Deputy Hakim of the Shymkent city, and also the Mr. Kashimov, so and also the representative from Tajikistan. So I think all the three countries, they are working on projects to develop this economic corridor. So we are very much encouraged by these positive remarks from all the three countries. So we will incorporate all these suggestions, and we will revise the roadmap. So I am really sorry that given the limited time, so we won't be able to have all the inputs and views from the other participants who wish to speak but didn't have the time to speak. So, but I think our discussion will be open. So after the workshop, we would encourage you to to continue the discussion and dialogue either through email or through bilateral meetings if needed. With that, so I'll just conclude this session, and I'll just hand over to my colleague Christian to moderate session 2. Yeah, hi Christian, over to you.
Thank you, Xinglang. There was a very fruitful session, and we got a lot of inspiration, a lot of detailed suggestions that the team has prepared. And now we're in the difficult situation to basically see what kind of way forward we can derive from that, and how we can prioritize and come up with some achievable goals. Both maybe some quick wins that we can find to have some early successes that we can attribute to the corridor, but also to start some long-term developments that are needed to improve the cooperation and integration of the three countries under this corridor platform. So I will have the pleasure to moderate this session, and just for your information, I'm leading the support to the Almaty-Bishkek economic corridor to Kazakhstan and the Kyrgyz Republic. This is or is still the pilot corridor in Central Asia, and was supported by ADB and both countries since more than 6 years now. So there are a lot of lessons to be learned from there. And also positive and negative lessons, but generally it's very encouraging to see that the economic corridor development as a concept is basically rolled out more in the region, and that more economic corridors are being created, and that the lessons can be learned from ABEC are implemented in new corridors, but also that the corridors eventually can be connected as earlier suggested based on the geographical proximity. So this session is basically structured pretty much like the first session. We will have a short presentation to structure the discussion from my colleague Xinglang Hu, who is the team leader of the Shymkent Tashkent Khujand Economic Corridor Development Initiative. We will have then 3 statements from all the 3 countries as a reaction to that, and hopefully in this session we will have a more lively discussion, because we actually have to agree on a way forward, and we have to have this difficult task of prioritization and reducing the aspirations under this corridor to something that is really achievable. And this means also taking into consideration the limited resources in terms of ADB support, but also in terms of the feasible reform speed and the time it takes to change regulations and harmonize standards across countries, especially in this difficult times during COVID and during border closures and reduced trade. So with these few words of introduction, I would hand back the microphone to my colleague Xinglang Hu, who will give a 10-minute presentation.
Thank you, Christian, for the introduction. And I will provide a very brief update on the proposed new activities in support of the Trilateral Economic Corridor. So bear in mind of the time, so I will be very brief. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. So first, I will provide a brief update of the progress of the existing TA and followed by the rationale for the continued TA support, and then focus on proposed activities. Yeah, next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Ms. Xinglan, I think we're just having some problems in showing the slideshow for the English. We're fixing it.
Okay, so I'll just provide a brief recap of the ongoing TA. So the TA was approved in October 2018. The TA inception missions were conducted in May 2019 in the 3 countries, which came up with broad consensus on 6 interrelated thematic focus areas for the economic corridor development, which I will not detail. And then the first regional workshop was held in December 2019 in Tashkent, which gathered together for the first time participants from the 3 countries to discuss the vision of the corridor and help to sharpen the focus of the study. And consequently, the TA team has developed the draft roadmap, which is for our discussion today. The completion of the roadmap will mark the end of the first phase of the TA. And on the rationale for continued TA support, we feel there is a strong need to continue TA support to help the countries implement the roadmap for the economic corridor development. First, there is strong commitment among countries to deepening regional cooperation and integration through plans, as we heard, to implement joint projects and to increase bilateral trade as well as exports to other countries and regions by facilitating transit trade. And second, there are growing interest and commitment among the stakeholders for the economic corridor development through their active engagement and constructive suggestions. Notable among this is the suggestion to apply a project-focused approach to achieve tangible results quickly, so which we have taken into consideration. Third, we see a key role of regional cooperation and integration in restoring and fostering economic growth in the post-COVID era. This can be achieved through reviving trade, re-energizing tourism, as we have heard from our colleague from Uzbekistan, and recollecting production value chains. Thus, we believe that this economic corridor has great potential in contributing to the economic growth of the 3 countries. And fourth, despite the COVID-19, we see strong momentum of economic corridor development in this region, such as the Almaty-Bishkek economic corridor, as mentioned by my colleague Christian, which is yielding tangible results with investment projects being developed for financing in transport, tourism, health, and agricultural sectors. So this has set a good example for our trilateral economic corridor development. So the above considerations are the basis for our continued support. And for the new activities under TA, So basically, we have three components or outputs for the next phase of the TA. Under output one, we will conduct 2 pre-feasibility studies for selected priority projects to develop this economic corridor. So one study will assess the establishment of cross-border international center for trade and economic cooperation between Shymkent and Tashkent. This has come at the requests of the governments of Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. So the study aims to provide a framework for the center through analysis of key aspects of the cross-border trade and the economic cooperation, including logistic services in the border areas, business opportunities to attract the private investment, development of modern international and regional wholesale and retail trade, and invigorating international tourism along the historical Silk Road in the economic corridor region. So another pre-feasibility study would involve Tajikistan. So in cooperation with the other 2 countries, the topic of this specific study is under consideration by the Tajik government, which will be confirmed after this workshop. So under output 2, there are 2 major activities. So first is facilitating the signing, particularly the implementation of the memorandum of understanding among the 3 countries on this as the economic corridor development. So we understand that the Kazakhstan government is coordinating the signing of this MOU. We hope it will be signed soon. Second, we will support the institutional setup of this trilateral economic corridor, namely the creation and the operationalization of the corridor, including steering committee and working groups in the focus areas. So this will involve very intensive coordination among the central, oblast, and the city governments and multi-sector stakeholders. So, strong coordination and collaboration among the 3 countries will be essential for to synergize in policies and reform agendas, as mentioned by Christian. So this will also be supported under this TA. And under output 3, so there are 2 activities. The first is the conduct of economic corridor related training workshops with focus on specific sectors such as joint border customs control, cross-border agricultural value chains. And the second, conduct study tours in other regions and countries. For example, in the Greater Mekong sub-region Europe or the People's Republic of China. So to learn other good economic corridor related practices and experiences. So these activities will help the countries strengthen institutional capacity for economic corridor planning, designing, and implementation, particularly for cross-border economic corridors. So currently, we are mobilizing additional TA funding of up to $100 million US. So once funding is secured, we will consult the governments and we will jointly implement the TA activities. So I will stop here and will be glad to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Xinlang. Maybe may I request you to say again the framework for this ADB support? What is exactly the time frame and the amount again, so that we can frame our discussion accordingly and our expectations?
You mean the funding of this TA?
Yes, the additional funding and the time horizon.
Okay, the additional funding, so I think is up to 1 million. So we are currently applying funding from ADB managed the Regional Cooperation Fund. I think the likely approval of the funding might come around September, maybe latest October. I mean, hopefully the funding can be approved. And then after that, we will further process this TA increase. And then so the implementation might start the last quarter of this year. Yeah, we will work together with the countries to develop consultant TORs and also specific activities. So I think there are a lot of work ahead of us. So all this we need the support of the countries. Yeah, thank you. I hope I made myself clear.
Okay, thank you, Xinlang. I think that's very helpful also to frame our expectations going forward in terms of the ADB support. So now I would like to invite the three statements that are part of this session. Firstly, Mrs. Khujand Aginbayeva, she's advisor to the first Vice Minister of National Economy in the Republic of Kazakhstan. Please limit your intervention to 5 to 7 minutes.
Добрый день, уважаемые участники семинара.
Good afternoon, dear participants of the seminar. Good afternoon, Christian. I'm very happy to see all of you. And I thank you for this opportunity to deliver my statement. I agree with the assessment of the Asian Development Bank experts that this corridor will generate benefits for all three countries, and it will turn this corridor into a highly dynamic economic corridor, and it will also create the foundation for the cooperation and other linkages between our countries in various areas, including improving transport connectivity, trade facilitation, formation of high value-added products and tourism development. And in the conditions of the unstable economic situation and the significant reduction of commodity prices and the growing risks in the area of trade, active development of this trade infrastructure and the creation of new formats and instruments of trade, in our opinion, is probably the best way that we can jointly tackle the crisis in the economies of our countries. And as it has been mentioned very rightly so in the report, one of the long-term consequences of the pandemic will be diversification and the reduction, the downsizing of the supply chains. But that also creates major opportunities for us to increase intra-regional trade and inter-regional trade, as it was mentioned in the report, up to 65% by 2030. You know, that makes me very optimistic in reality. And my statement will be devoted to one of the projects which is aimed at improving the trade infrastructure and the improvement of quality of infrastructure and water management.
And this is a project of establishing the International Center for Trade Economic Cooperation that is being currently negotiated for the past 2 years between the governments of the region. And I consider that the measures for implementation of this project, they have been included into the roadmap for the development of the regional economic corridor that we are now reviewing. And I know that one of the key factors, one of the key success factors for this corridor is the very good position of our region, which provides for very good cross-border connectivity and economic activities. And we also have tight, close relations, cultural and historical, between neighbors in the region. This creates opportunities for us to increase our mutually beneficial cooperation among our countries. And in this regard, implementation of various projects and various sectors of economy will help us increase economic cooperation through the facilitation of trade, the development of international and interregional trade facilitation and cooperation. And the MTC platform will become the key trade and logistics hub for our countries for the export of our products. Therefore, we are viewing the ITC as one of the key elements for our countries that includes wholesale distribution centers, logistics centers, and hubs for the countries involved. And over the last half a year, we have had a series of negotiations with the involvement of regional authorities, specifically regarding the location of the project. And we have also established the task force on the level of public authorities of the two countries, and we are now working on identification of potential investors from each of the countries. And also the government of Kazakhstan has established an additional interdepartmental working group. And in July this year, the Ministry of Trade Integration and the Ministry of Investment and Foreign Trade of Uzbekistan have signed a roadmap for the implementation of this project, within which it envisages preparation of a comprehensive feasibility study in terms of reference. And as my colleagues have emphasized before me, one of the key priorities in the tourism sector is, and one of the key problems, challenges in this area is the border crossing points. And I would like to emphasize that the establishment of the CAEC will help relieve the loads on the on one of the border crossing points and increase the passenger and cargo transportation flows. And it will also facilitate development of the Zhebek-Zholu border crossing point, which is one of the key border crossing points, international and transit for international and regional transit transportation and passenger transportation flows. Also, the Ministry of Trade Integration of Kazakhstan, in cooperation with the Ministry of Investment of Uzbekistan, we are now working on, and we have submitted an application to the Asian Development Bank, as it has been mentioned by Ms. Sinlan, regarding the ITC project, and we would like to suggest to include into the roadmap an additional clause on research in addition to feasibility studies. And another additional suggestion that I would like to make, in accordance with the national legislation of the Republic of Kazakhstan, the feasibility studies for projects must be prepared in accordance with our national rules. And I believe that the same rules are also effective in Uzbekistan, given that the project will include partially public and private investment. I believe that the project must be prepared in line with the rules that exist in each of the countries. So my suggestion is as follows: to get involved into the preparation of the feasibility study of technical experts from the two countries involved, so that they would be able to prepare a document that will be, in the future, will be cleared by all of the national authorities and finalized by them. Overall, I am really happy to see among directions of development the huge transit capacity potential of the region, and we believe that it is very important, and we expect the transit potential and development of transit transportation in the region to have a very big positive impact on the regional development. And we find it very important to integrate the regional corridors into international continental transportation routes. So this is all that I wanted to share. Thank you. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Khujand, and it's great to see you being part of the development of this corridor, because I remember you were one of the first people advertising for this corridor, and it's great that you are remaining on board. Just one question for clarification: the feasibility studies, they are somehow mentioned already in the suggestions, but do you have specific projects that you want them to focus on, or do you generally would like to have the option of the technical assistance to support feasibility studies in general, depending on the projects that are that will be developed along the way? Basically, do you have a specific suggestion for a project that you want the feasibility studies to focus on?
Well, currently, I was speaking about the one particular project, the establishment of the International Trade Cooperation Center on the border between the two countries, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. And right now we are negotiating some organizational arrangements with Uzbekistan, and we would like to see the terms of reference that will be prepared for this project. We would like to see it as a comprehensive feasibility study for the two countries, and we have already agreed that we will have one integrated single terms of reference for this project for the two countries, but these terms of reference will need to be cleared by national authorities in the two countries. Therefore, my suggestion was to get on board technical experts from Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan in the preparation of these terms of reference for this project, because we already have had some precedents in the past when international experts or consultants prepared terms of reference or feasibility studies and which were of very high quality. Those were sound terms of reference, but content-wise and substance-wise, it was not quite in line with the national legislation in Kazakhstan, and therefore we had some obstacles with the clearance of these terms of reference in the future.
So we will now go on to hear from Uzbekistan, specifically from Mr. Alisher Sharipov, Chief Specialist for International Cooperation Department in the Ministry of Transport of Uzbekistan. Please go ahead. We can't hear you. Maybe your microphone is still muted. Mr. Sharipov, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Do you see my presentation?
So far we see you in person, but not the presentation. But maybe I can request you to start already while the presentation loads, because we have only 5 to 7 minutes for your slot.
Okay. You know very well that Khujand, Tashkent and Shymkent are cities of bread. The most hospitable people live there. Of course, we will be extremely happy to personally communicate with you today, including treating amazing gifts, branded fruits and vegetables, and wonderful cuisine of our countries. To our great regret, today we are forced to communicate virtually, but we will definitely defeat the pandemic and meet together frequently. First of all, let me express deep gratitude to our transport colleagues from Kazakhstan and Tajikistan for non-restricted approach for transport during pandemic. As a result, despite of decline of production and export, the transport volumes showed growth. Do you see now my presentation?
Yes, now it's there.
So here you can see the growth. Today we are considering measures for the development of the economic corridor Khujand, Tashkent, Shymkent, which adoption will make it possible to use effectively the geographical position of our countries and cities, creating the most important regional transport and logistics system. Our common goal is to remove consistently restrictions in the field of transport. This is the key to the efficiency of the corridor, its dynamic development in a rapidly changing and complicated world. Last year, I visited almost all border points between Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. Believe me or not, but my calculations showed 10 minutes for citizens, half an hour for cars, buses, they are priority, and 40 minutes and about 50 minutes for trucks. This is a photo of 3 militants who long ago protected border between Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, and the border point, Shymkent, was renamed on 3 heroes. The corridor has high economic potential. At the same time, increasing economic growth requires an advanced development of transport services to meet growing demand for transportation due to an increasing volume of production and of goods. Before March 23, we succeeded to create good connectivity between the cities and localities involved into the economic corridor. Such cities as Chitesai, Kızılar'da, Turkestan, Taras, Khorgos, Petropavlovsk in Kazakhstan, as well as a number of cities in Russia, are also covered. Soon we restore all the routes on a regular basis. Together we are creating a powerful and attractive center of economic development, a large regional market that brings together more than 10 million people living alongside the corridor. My colleague, Mr. Abdullah Hashimov from the Ministry of Investment and Foreign Trade proposed that after completion of this corridor, it would be good if ADB and the CAREC will consider the possibility to prolong it up to Osh. But from the point of view of the Ministry of Transport, we kindly ask ADB and CAREC to consider the prolongation to the south until Dushanbe, to the east, to Bishkek and Issyk-Kul Lake. The most important thing today is to ensure that
there is noise in the background. One of the participants has been asking to increase to make it full screen because he cannot see the text on the slides. So this participant is asking to make the presentation full screen because he cannot see the text and the figures.
Now can you see? Теперь видно?
Да, видно.
The most important thing
Yes,
today
now he can see.
The reliable operation of transport systems during the COVID-19 pandemic. During this most difficult period, we managed to create conditions for almost uninterrupted transportation of goods, primarily essential goods. In the future, we must develop a transport system that will ensure the medical, food, and energy security of our countries. It will be necessary to overcome the global crisis caused by the pandemic to create transport preconditions for the fastest possible growth of economies in the post-pandemic world. The fight against the pandemic has clearly shown that transport cooperation is of paramount importance in the times of crisis. The experience accumulated during this period should help us create once and forever such interaction in the transport sector that no political, economic, social, or pandemic crisis can stop or even slow down the movement of traffic flows between countries. Sorry for some emotions. I have lost close people, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot for your presentation. For time reasons, let's move on directly to the presentation or the statement from Tajikistan, from Mr. Anwar Yaqubi. He's the Deputy Chairman of Sukt Oblast Administration. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I am really happy to see everybody in good health in this difficult time. And there is some noise in the background. And while we are fighting this pandemic of COVID-19, and I'm happy that we have managed to arrange for this meeting. I would like to thank the Asian Development Bank for holding this regional virtual workshop, and I would like to thank the group of experts of the Asian Development Bank for preparing quite comprehensive materials for the assessment of the roadmap and for incorporating all of our proposals that we have shared in Tashkent during the last meeting. And regarding the roadmap, I would like to say that we have several proposals. And after that, I will also share my opinion briefly regarding our next steps. Regarding the first thematic focus area that we have discussed in Tashkent, the improvement of the road and railway connectivity, I would like to say that given what we can see in the assessment of the existing capacity, specifically with regard to the development of urban infrastructure and construction of closed circuit roads, specifically in Uzbekistan, I would like to say that we will need to place more emphasis on improvement of and to rename this component into the improvement of road, railway, and urban connectivity, and specifically given the restoration and rehabilitation of transportation in some of the regions of Tajikistan. We will also need to include infrastructure into this component, so we will need to call the first thematic area, the first pillar, improvement of road, rail connectivity, urban infrastructure. And I believe that in the future, going forward with these surveys in the regions, specifically with regard to the development of infrastructure, of urban infrastructure, we will place more emphasis on expansion of the project and activities focused on reconstruction of bridges across Sirdarya River for the city of Khujand. And it would also be interesting for me to see the electrification of railways, because with this regard, we have a very good opportunity for the implementation of the project focused on electrification of the rail section between Khujand, and some other cities of Tajikistan. And I also would like, regarding the water infrastructure, I would like to say that for our countries, we still have this. Our countries still face the challenge of water supply, because this was low water seasons from the beginning of this year. So, and on the other hand, in some of the other regions of our countries, there were heavy rains that resulted in destruction of infrastructure. So I believe that for Tashkent and Tashkent Oblast and the Turkestan Oblast, it will be very important to clean the local reservoir that will, going forward, provide for an opportunity to increase the capacity of water storage, which will increase 30% in the nearest few years. And I also would like to reiterate my support of the next steps with regard to the further research and exchange of experience and sharing best practices. I would like to say that we have always supported these activities, and we will need to approach the signing of the memorandum of cooperation, and in the nearest future we will need to update and approve the roadmap, and we will need to approve this project at the ceremony of signing the memorandum of understanding by the heads of the regions. And we will also need to address the issue of establishing the steering committee and task forces in the regions by appointing or recruiting specialists that would be capable of coordinating the activities related to the implementation of the roadmap that we have been discussing in Tashkent and today. Because we already start some particular work on the ground, so we will need to have specialists or focal points or coordinators appointed on the ground so that they will be able to start working on the preparation of proposals with regard to the implementation of this roadmap, so that the steering committee, so that it would be easier for the steering committee to allocate funds or include these proposals into their feasibility study. And also regarding the establishment of the or development of the special economic zones, I would like to narrow this area down, because the special economic zones may be quite a broad concept, because there are special, specific, specialized, or industrialized zones. So I believe that we will also include the concept of tourism zones, because we need to focus on development of other zones as well, including the tourism zones. With this so along with the support of development of economic corridor, we'll also need to focus on the development of such projects so that they would be conducive to the development and improvement of urban infrastructure as well. Because as you know, we have a number of projects that may also be implemented through the partnership, through the public and private partnership mechanism, with the initial technical support, so that these projects would have the status of projects included into the economic corridor development program. And this would help us promote necessary investment. And I believe that we will be able to, I'm looking forward to further cooperating with you, and I would like to wish you all good health and the soonest recovery from these pandemics, so that we will be able to combat this evil, the COVID-19 pandemics. And I also would like to reiterate our readiness to cooperate. And in conclusion, I would like to say the words of the chairman of this of Sukt Oblast, and the invitation to come and visit Tajikistan at the earliest opportunity. Thank you very much. There was a very strong noise in the background. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Yakubi, for your insights and for voicing your strong support to the economic corridor development. I think what we heard in summary is that there's a strong prioritization for connectivity to create a market for goods and services in this combined region of the three countries. That requires, I guess, hard infrastructure in terms of border crossing point modernization, but also soft infrastructure in terms of harmonization for more trade, easier trade, for common tourism, and for the movement of people. So that's at least what I heard coming through from all three statements quite strongly. But I would like to open the floor now to further discuss this and to have more opinions and voices specifically to directed towards the three outputs that my colleague Xinlang Hu has elaborated on in her presentation. So, which is mainly the Trade Center for Trade, the Memorandum of Understanding, and the institutional structure. But we will talk about the institutional structure more in the next session. And in terms of the capacity building and development focus in the third output. So yeah, we would like to hear your opinions and in terms of which priorities we should focus on going forward. So we have around 10 to 15 minutes for the discussion before we will dive in more into the institutional setup for the corridor. So the floor is open. Are there any volunteers for a first statement? Maybe somebody not from the transport sector to give a more rounded or like a different voice from a different sector, because we were quite transport focused and connectivity focused so far in the statements. So is there any objection to the outputs that Xinlang
Sorry,
has?
Christian, I think Miss Guljan Arjin is raising her or his hand.
Okay. Thank you, Irene. Please go ahead. Sorry if I haven't seen it.
Спасибо, Кристиан. У меня, скорее всего, тоже...
Thank you, Christian. I suppose I will have a comment about transport. I would simply like to add a few words. I saw it in the roadmap. I saw the suggestion about the construction of a new sorting station on the railway in Tashkent province, next to the border with Turkestan province. I didn't quite understand where exactly in which district it was to be placed, this sorting station, but I'd like to add that our transport authority will probably support me on this. We all understand that the only railway BCP with Uzbekistan is Saragash-Kilis. It's overloaded. And according to our estimates, to the estimates of our specialists of the national company, the establishment of an additional sorting station will not solve the problem of the railway being overloaded. Therefore, I'd like to note that maybe we can consider the option of opening and expanding some other hubs, not the one next to Tashkent necessarily, but for us to take the extra load off the Tashkent railway, maybe we should go south towards Makhtaral BCP. That's an existing railway BCP. In June, at the Transport Council chaired by the Prime Minister, a decision was made to build a new railway link from Saragash, from the Saragash station, actually it's to the north of Saragash station to Makhtaral station. And by doing this, we will connect our remote southern region with a railway link. And we can ensure partial transshipment of cargoes through this second border crossing point, Makhtaral Sirdarya. I think the station is called Sirdarya. Therefore, you had a footnote there, right? That we need to justify whether it is feasible to build a new sorting hub, but maybe taking into account this information about the construction of the railway link, maybe we should include expansion of the railway BCP in Makhtaral besides the construction of the sorting hub near Tashkent. That's the only thing that I wanted to add. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot for this suggestion. Maybe we can have this reflected in the plans, reflected in the report when we update it. And we might come back to you for more specific location of the planned railway BCP. Any other suggestions? Maybe we can hear from the horticulture sector or from tourism, or specifically to the suggestion to specify more on the special economic zones. Any suggestions from that not directly transport related sectors? Mr. Shakirov, please go ahead.
Right, thank you very much. As it has been mentioned, in the 2 years, the project has done a lot. I'd like to say a few words about this session, in particular, the feasibility study. In this case, more than $100 million is going to be allocated for the feasibility study. Therefore, we'd like to request that the representatives of other sectors, I think transport and the transport and logistics representatives such as roads and road facilities are very important. They're very important in the integration and the development of this corridor. Therefore, I'd like to ask you the following. The process of the feasibility study should clearly plan for each sector to be given a role so that we would be able to work very clearly and accurately on all these components. I think that during the discussions, during the third session, where we will consider the institutional approaches, we will probably go in greater detail. So we need to be able to cover the things that we will need during the implementation of this project. Because there are a lot of issues in these 3 provinces, and we have to work on the components that are mostly involved in the process of this project implementation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I think when we are able, or if we are able to agree on an institutional structure in the next session, that would, of course, pave the way to have like more technical sector-specific discussions in the future. But for now, we want to see some kind of thematic prioritization and see if the suggested outputs in the presentation are basically reflecting well the current thinking and the how you would see the corridor moving forward in the near future. I see that Mr. Bahodir also has raised his hand. Maybe can you limit your intervention to 1 or 2 minutes, please? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Christian. Actually, I'd like to request clarification from the participants on some of the comments they've made on the draft roadmap. So I'll speak in Russian.
Guljan, good afternoon once again. I'd like to turn to you and a few words about your suggestion to consider the option or this project for the establishment of a new railway link between Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. You mentioned that the works are underway or some works have already been completed. Can you provide some additional information to us? As a matter of fact, we discussed this issue both in Kazakhstan and in Uzbekistan, and Uzbekistan is of the opinion that any projects that increase the transportation distance across Kazakhstan are not profitable for Uzbekistan because of the very high transit railway tariffs. And Uzbekistan's businessmen prefer to follow the border crossing points that minimize transportation across the territory of Kazakhstan. Therefore, it links to the issue of tariffs that had been raised previously. So are there any agreements that have already been reached? If so, I'd be grateful if you could provide that information to us. Okay, good. We will provide this information to you. As far as the agreement is concerned, yes, this issue has been discussed at the most recent meeting. I don't quite remember the date, but also other options were considered for the construction of the railway. But the most optimal and the most convenient from our point of view and from the point of view of taking the extra burden off the Tashkent, the railway hub, we suggested this option of a railway link through Makhtaral. Of course, this does not mean that this will become a key transit hub, but by doing this, we will also address some internal domestic problems, the problems of connectivity between our provinces. That's like the top priority in this case. And we simply suggested that as an alternative, as an option. We need to calculate the economics, just how effective will it be to build a new sorting station, and how effective is it going to be to load this link to the Saragash-Keles BCP, which has no potential for any further expansion, when we can actually use a second border crossing point if Makhtaral is linked to the Saragash station directly.
Okay, thanks a lot for this clarification. I think we can discuss in more detail offline and with more clarifications later on, because we have over 100 participants in the meeting, and maybe it goes into too much detail for now. So I would like to ask a last round if anybody has a last 1 minute statement for this session. Otherwise, I would start then the next session already. So there's
one guest, KA.
Yeah,
KA.
спасибо.
Okay, please go ahead and identify yourself. Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I will speak in Russian. Я хотел бы просто дополнить.
I would simply like to add a few words. I'm the representative of the joint stock company Kazakhstan Temirjila, Kaysar Ismailov, Kazakhstan Railways. So in addition to what Guljan said, I'd like to add that the reason that Makhtaral district is being considered, this is just a brief comment, is that district is also a cargo forming district. This is where the cargo is produced, so that we don't have to bring it from this district somewhere else. There are certain cargo volumes that can be turned around so that they don't have to bypass. In any case, they go in the direction of Tashkent. From there, they cross the border. And this way, the route will be shorter, and there are certain transportation volumes that would be able to travel shorter distances. This is the comment. And if possible, a question. There is a question for our Tajik colleagues, if they're here. So it's a question about transport. What is being done currently in Tajikistan to consolidate the cargoes? What about cargo consolidation? Are there any specific activities on the creation of some logistical centers, for instance, for the horticultural products? As far as I know, the agricultural guys in Tajikistan, so everyone who has anything to do with horticulture, the situation is such, at least as far as I know, that every person grows his or her own products. These are the specific realities. And then they try to organize some sort of a transportation using road transport, automobiles. So is there any effort to consolidate the cargoes of this kind? So this is a question for Tajikistan colleagues. I'd like to get their answer if possible. Thank you very much.
Is there anybody as a last statement from Tajikistan transport sector or logistics to quickly answer this? After that, I will close the session. If there's no direct response to that, we can exchange contacts, and then this can be discussed offline. Yeah, so maybe that's a better way. Sorry to wrap up the session. We are just, to the benefit of all participants, wrap up the session and continue to the next session, and then we will provide the contacts for the representative of the Tajik transport sector to you, and then maybe this discussion can be continued offline or with less participants. So I think what came out quite clearly is that there's broad-based support to the suggested outputs and of course to the corridor itself, and that the main focus seems to be to increase connectivity, to improve trade regulations, and to support expansion and improvement of border crossing points and multimodal transport, railways, road. We also heard about urban transport. So this seems to be a key issue remaining in the region, and the economic corridor development should focus that among its other activities. So thank you for this productive session. I hope this was satisfactory for everyone, and thank you for the discussion and your contributions. I would like to then hand over to the next session, session 3, and the moderator is Gulmira Akberdieva. She's head of the tourism department in the Akimat of Turkestan Oblast, Kazakhstan. Over to you, Ms. Akberdieva. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. First of all, I would like to welcome everyone. I'm very happy to see all of you here today. I'd like to thank all the participants of this virtual regional workshop on the economic corridor between Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. Yet again, I'm very happy to see all of you here today. I'd like to thank Asian Development Bank for the trust for me to be the moderator of this session since December 6th, 2019, and up until, well, we had the first workshop back then. And back then, I was representing the private sector. Today, I represent the state, the government.
Те проекты, которые были озвучены нами, будут уже продвигаться все быстрее и плодотворнее.
Promoted and will be implemented in an accelerated fashion. So the third session of ours is the preparation for the formation of an institutional structure for the Shymkent, Tashkent, Khujand economic corridor. As the previous speakers mentioned, the volume, the scope of works for the successful development of the economic corridor touches upon many sectors of the economy besides trade, including agriculture, including transport, modernization of border crossing points. And in this connection, the experts of the Asian Development Bank are suggesting to form an institutional structure that will ensure the implementation of activities included in the roadmap of the economic corridor. At the first session, Mr. Bakhadir Ghaniev mentioned that he would tell us during the third session about the ADB suggested institutional structure to be followed, of course, by a discussion of some key steps in the formation of the institutional structure or framework of this corridor, including the creation of a steering committee of this entity and the possibility of signing a memorandum of understanding between Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Ghaniev, who will present the framework, the governance framework for the corridor. Please, you have the floor, and I'm very happy to see you. The feeling is mutual. So, I'll try to be brief. I'll try not to take up too much of your time, but let me mention that the institutional mechanism that we are suggesting in the draft roadmap is based to a significant degree on the experience of the development of other economic corridors, in particular the Almaty-Bishkek economic corridor and the corridors in Southeast Asia. It is suggested, as you can see on the screen, to create 3 bodies that would be responsible for the development of this proposed economic corridor. But it's very important. Can you show the previous slide, please? Previous slide, please. Doesn't seem to work, does it? Okay, then. So these 3 levels, the 3 levels or 3 bodies include the steering committee, the thematic working groups, and the secretariat. Right, that's the one. An important aspect of this institutional setup is that these structures and entities that will be responsible for the development of the corridor will be integrated in the existing bilateral mechanisms for cooperation between the countries. There are bilateral intergovernmental commissions between pairs of countries, and we would suggest that the bodies responsible for the development of the Shymkent, Tashkent, Khujand economic corridor be integrated with these intergovernmental commissions. The steering committee Please switch off the microphone. Dear host, dear administrators, please switch off the mics of the people that are not making the presentation. Thank you.
Значит, можно продолжить?
Can I continue? Yes, please. Please do. Our time is limited. Right. Please go to the next slide if possible. If that's not possible, okay, I will talk to this slide. So the steering committee is supposed to consist of deputy ministers or ministers responsible for the work within the framework of CAREC, and also representatives of the cities, Tashkent, Shymkent, and Khujand, and the provinces, Turkestansky, Tashkentsky, and Soksky provinces. So this committee will be involved in overall governance and management of the implementation and the development of the corridor. In all the 6 thematic areas that we have already listed, it is suggested to have thematic working groups that will consist of the representatives of the government and the private sector. In this regard, I'd like to have some explanations from you and from the other participants. I mean, the ones that suggested that we create some sort of a regional committee or council on tourism. You see, the thematic group on tourism that we are suggesting will include the representatives of the tourist business and the state bodies responsible for tourism. So it's not quite clear to me how will these two entities interact, what's going to be the difference between them, and why can't it be done in the form of a thematic working group that we are suggesting. The third body is the Secretariat that will be responsible for monitoring progress of the corridor development. They will prepare periodic reports, and they will also coordinate meetings of thematic working groups and the Secretariat. No, I mean thematic working groups and the steering committee. So the Secretariat will be supported by the Asian Development Bank. And 2 other bodies, the steering committee and the working groups, will coordinate their activities closely with the working groups and with the ministerial conference that is responsible for the overall CAREC agenda. So in brief, that's the institutional setup that we are suggesting, yet again, based on the experience of other corridors. And if you have any suggestions or comments or remarks to this mechanism, we will, of course, try to reflect that in the next version of the document. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ganiev. We have just seen the setup suggested by ADB. So we have the coordination committee, we have the thematic working groups, and the secretariat. You have already defined the functions of these entities within the institutional setup and the composition of each of the entities. Now I'd like to give the floor to Nurlan Shaparbayev, Director of the Department of Investment Policy of the Ministry of National Economy of Kazakhstan. I'd like to say that we only have 5 minutes. Please stick to the time limits. Nurlan. Good afternoon, Gulmira. Thank you. I can be even briefer than 5 minutes, taking into account the fact that we don't have much time left. In principle, I support this institutional framework with a few additions, I suppose. As far as the intergovernmental agreements are concerned and committees, most probably the intergovernmental committee will not be a permanent, will not be a standing body where decisions will be made. Because the speaker is breaking off. We want for the functions of the committees to boil down to the creation of the steering committee. And then all the necessary decisions and meetings will be done at the level of the steering committee. Because, well, this is based on the experience of the Almaty-Bishkek corridor. You see, here we have 3 countries, and political decisions can be addressed at the level of the Intergovernmental Council, but here you would have to have what, 3 intergovernmental committees. You would have to have them involved. I think this is a bit burdensome. So I agree that the steering committee should be the supreme authority in this case. And but to create this steering committee, we need to have meetings of 3 intergovernmental councils between the 3 countries to have the steering committee established. Also, thematic working groups are effective. That's an effective tool for having more specific discussions in different areas within the framework of the economic corridor. As far as the Secretariat is concerned, yes, CAREC, you see, the CAREC Secretariat is well justified, but for the economic corridor, I think it's a bit premature to create some sort of a secretariat that will coordinate all the activities, etc. In the Almaty-Bishkek economic corridor, there is no such secretariat. And what will the secretariat be doing? Therefore, I suggest to think about this body, whether it's necessary or not. As far as the corridor itself is concerned, I'd like to remind you that we are now working on signing the memoranda of understanding between the regions included in the economic corridor from 3 countries. At the moment, it's Shymkent and Turkestansky province. They already supported signing of the memorandum. Our Ministry of National Economy sent the note to Uzbekistan, Tajikistan last year, but unfortunately we have not heard back from them yet. So I'd like to ask our colleagues from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan to speed up the process. We want to be able to sign the memorandum of understanding, and it is suggested to sign it at the upcoming ministerial conference. The MC usually takes place in November. So these are our comments. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Nurlan, for your very detailed suggestions on behalf of Kazakhstan to adjust the proposed framework by the Asia Development Bank. And thank you for telling us clearly that we will not sign a memorandum here today, right, due to a number of reasons. And you mentioned these reasons. You even suggested that the signing be postponed until the ministerial conference in November. Thank you, Nurlan. Now I'd like to give the floor to Uzbekistan, Nurbek Rajapov, Deputy Head of the Investment Department of the Administration of the Tashkent Province. Nurbek Rajapov, please, you have the floor. Please deliver your opinion about this new suggested institutional structure of our corridor.
Good afternoon, dear participants of the regional economic corridor development between Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kazakhstan. I fully support this project, and we have already received a letter from the Ministry of Investment and Foreign Trade about the memorandum of understanding between Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kazakhstan. And the Department of Investment and Foreign Trade of the Achimet of Tashkent Oblast does not have any comments or suggestions regarding this memorandum. I would like to point out that within the terms of our reference, we will be ready to support the successful implementation of this project. This is all I wanted to share. Thank you. Over to you. Спасибо, господин Нурбек Раджабов, for being so concise, and you have pointed out everything was on point, and you fully agree with everything, and you have even confirmed that you have already supported our memorandum. And now, let's give the floor to Mr. Isakulov. I'm happy to see you, Mr. Isakulov. Yes, I have a question, and my question is as follows. It's more of technical nature. What kind of Mr. Shuhrat, let's answer questions after the discussion, because we'll have one more speaker to deliver his speech. It's Mr. Akhmetov Sharim John, who is the head of the Department of State Property from Tajikistan. Let's not hurt our neighbors, and let's give everybody an opportunity to speak up. Mr. Sharif John, please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Gulmira. Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. Today, the Sugt Oblast is developing dynamically, and we see very big contribution into this development of the international development associations, and the Sugd Oblast has made big steps to improve its relationships with the neighbor countries and to develop its economy. And with the active support of the Asian Development Bank, we will be able to achieve this goal. Specifically through the development of the regional economic corridor, we will be able to improve the economic well-being not only of these three cities, but also of the nearby towns and the regions, and we will also improve the relationships and we will be able to improve our relationships with these countries. In December last year, we have seen that these cities are interested in the development of regional cooperation, and they have a lot in common, and they have a lot of points, connecting points. And the survey made by the research made by the consultants of the Asian Development Bank have yet reiterated the importance and the need for developing this regional economic corridor for the establishment and of a platform for further development of the economy of the region, creation of new jobs, development of tourism, and so forth. And as it has already been mentioned before, the population of the Sugd Oblast is growing annually, and the creation of new jobs is one of the priorities. Therefore, the establishment of this corridor will provide an opportunity for creating such facilities and thereby creating new jobs. And upon reviewing this roadmap, we have come to a conclusion that the experts have made great efforts and have brought good examples of a number of countries in creating similar corridors. And as we can see from this report, that the trade turnover among countries involved in the development of economic corridors has increased a lot. And for example, in Congo, or some of the examples are brought up by the consultants, they're quite interesting, and I believe that we need to adopt the best from these best practices and experience of other countries and other regions, specifically with regard to the implementation of modern technology. And specifically, the report describes the reasons for which the regional corridor between these three countries may be successful and will be able to develop dynamically, as well as the benefit that it will bring to the regions. And specifically, the report focused on the main product of Sugd Oblast, such as zinc or concentrate. But we will also need to diversify our economy and to develop other sectors of economy, specifically such as education, tourism, and education. And given the importance of this project, we have adopted the government of the Republic of Tajikistan on June 22nd this year. They have adopted a resolution on the draft memorandum of understanding between the three countries on the development of the regional economic corridor between the three countries. And upon this, in accordance with this resolution, the head of Sugd Oblast has been authorized to sign the memorandum of understanding. Therefore, the leadership of Sugd Oblast would like to confirm their readiness to sign this memorandum, and we also would like to express our readiness to host a meeting in Khujand for the signing of this memorandum of understanding. Of course, the pandemic situation caused by COVID-19 has hit heavily all of the economies across the world. And I believe that we'll be able to recover from these pandemics in the nearest future. And I would like to thank the ADB and the experts for their fruitful work. Thank you. Over to you. Thank you, Mr. Akhmedov, for a comprehensive intervention, as well as for the confirmation of your readiness to sign the memorandum of understanding, because it is very important to all of us, for all of the three countries. It is a very important document. And I also would like to thank all of the speakers for fruitful discussion, because of the establishment of this economic corridor includes interregional and multi-sectoral economic activities. And the establishment of this structure will be one of the key indicators of establishing the smooth and ongoing economic operation of our three countries. And for Kazakhstan, it is a very good example. The economic corridor between Bishkek and Almaty is a very good example for Kazakhstan, as it has been mentioned before by Mr. Ganiyev and Mr. Nurlan Shakurbayev. And we already have good experience. We have best practice in front of us that ensures maximum potential, the use of the maximum potential and successful implementation of a regional corridor development project. And we are looking forward to similar success under our project. And I think that Mr. Isakulov also wanted to ask something. Please be brief, because we are already behind our schedule. So you have literally 2 minutes. Well, regarding the institutional structures, there are some difficulties. Well, specifically, your document is not quite specific with regard to the way the system will operate. And overall, we support the creation of the thematic focus groups, working groups, and they may actually have the same functions as the Tourism Council, and they may correlate their activities, but the Secretariat and the thematic working groups must be long-standing bodies. They must be standing bodies with full-time experts involved. Because if it works the way as it used to work in the past, when some officials from various public authorities or agencies get involved occasionally into these working groups, then this will not bring any meaningful result. And we need to make sure that this work is consistent. Maybe I just did not understand it quite well. The way it will operate, maybe some experts will be involved, and maybe they will have a separate room allocated for them, and they will work there. And maybe they will have horizontal or vertical management structure. But I believe that we need to establish this organizational structure in a very meaningful way, because quite substantial funds are allocated by the ADB. So we need to make sure that these projects that are prepared by these working groups must be well substantiated economically and financially, so that these project proposals upon consideration by the ADB would be approved by the ADB. So I believe that I suggest that these working groups must be standing bodies with full-time staff members, and they need to have work plans for long term, and they must have their terms of reference and the description of their responsibilities, and they will need to be accountable to our national authorities and to the ADB's headquarters in Manila as well. So this is my proposal. Thank you very much, Mr. Sakulov, for a very good question, as well as for substantiation of the organizational structure. And I would like to ask Mr. Ganiyev, Mr. Bahadur Ganiyev, can you please comment on that? I would like to point out again that the institutional structure that is described in the draft roadmap that has been briefly described by myself earlier today, this is just our proposal based on the experience of developing other corridors. The final resolution on this institutional structure will be made by the governments and national authorities of the three countries involved into this corridor. Whether these thematic working groups will consist of full or part-time officials, or whether they will consist of full-time experts from the outside of public authorities. I believe that this decision is reserved to the governments of the countries involved. As regards the Secretariat, I agree with all of the opinions that have been voiced before, and I believe that at the very beginning the Secretariat will not have too much work to do, and therefore it will not need to have too many staff on board, but well, maybe at least some bare minimum number of staff members, full-time staff members must be recruited to the Secretariat so that they would be able to address some of the initial tasks. And as time goes by, and as the volume of work increases, maybe we will increase the number of staff members in the Secretariat. And as regards to the thematic working groups, I believe that the right to decide is reserved to the governments of the governments involved, and maybe the ADB itself will also have to decide which option it will be ready to support. Well, in this case, I believe that the national focal points will have a very big role to play here, and there must be initiative of the ADB. You have just described the institutional structure, but I believe that it needs to be broadened so that you can showcase the ways it is going to be operating, and so that we can see what we can do to improve its performance. And specifically, when there are some staff members, what will be the sources of salaries for these staff members, for these working groups, to pay, to remunerate the persons who will be represented in these working groups. So I believe that it would be good to hear the first suggestion from yourself. And as you said, there is a very good international experience, but we expect to hear from you broader vision. And if you submit this proposal to us, to all of the public authorities concerned, we will be able to provide our feedback and comment on this proposal, and to send it, to forward it to the ADB's headquarters. Thank you, Mr. Isakulov. I'm happy to see that you want to know in detail the way it is going to operate and the way all of the responsibilities will be distributed. But we are running, unfortunately, we are running out of time. Actually, we have run out of time already, and we need to value the precious time of our dear colleagues. So I would like to give the floor to Ms. Sinlan Hu, and I would like to thank all of the speakers who participated in session number 3. And during this session, we have considered all of the issues, and we have already reviewed the institutional structure that has been established by the ADB, and we have also the representatives of the 3 countries, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, have submitted their suggestions regarding the institutional structure. So I think that we do have experience of such regional economic corridors, such as economic corridor of Almaty and Bishkek. And I believe that by working together, we'll be able to find the best possible solution. And I also believe that this structure will also have political commitment at the highest level to be able to coordinate activities with different public authorities inside of the countries and among the countries as well, for the benefit of the economic corridor between Khujand, Tashkent, and Shymkent. Ms. Sinlan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Gumira, for your very efficient moderation of this session, and also thank you for being a champion for this economic corridor. So now let's turn to our closing session. So Mr. Kairat Torabayev, the Vice Minister of Trade and Integration, he has informed that he had to leave for another urgent meeting, so he couldn't come back. So now let me give the floor to Mr. Safdar Parvez to deliver his concluding remarks. So Safdar, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Shinglen and Ms. Gulmira. My congratulations to you for such effective moderation of this last session. Thank you very much for your support. You know, we have already been in this meeting now for over 3 hours, and this is a very long meeting without any coffee break and tea break. So I would just like to thank all of you for being here for such a long time. You know, let me just very quickly just say that first of all, we are very glad to see the level of participation in this meeting. You know, the standard of the discussion was very high. It was interactive. I think we are quite satisfied with the outcome of this meeting because there seems to be a consensus on the importance of this corridor. There seems to be general agreement about the design and the major components of the corridor that we have discussed today. I think we have gotten interesting perspectives on where and how this corridor should be extended. I think on the institutional arrangements, we have gotten very good feedback. Of course, you know, it was premature to spell out all the details of the institutional setup in this meeting. But I think based on your feedback, we will come back to you with a more elaborate design of how, at least from our experience, we propose the steering committee should be managed, the composition of the sector groups, and what kind of secretariat actually we had in mind. So I think we can clarify these things as we go along. We are also, I was very pleased to hear the progress that is being made on the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding, which represents the commitment of the 3 countries to this corridor at an official level. And I noted also the point raised by our private sector colleagues that such work memorandums of understanding should not exclude you know, the business associations, the civil society, etc. And that is why we have these sector working groups, etc., to widen the ownership and commitment of this corridor and involve all possible stakeholders in these meetings. We have already said at the start of the meeting that the Asian Development Bank is committed to continuing to support the implementation of the roadmap that you have generally endorsed today. Just to clarify once again that the amount of money that we now have is not $100 million, it is actually $1 million, but even $1 million we feel in order to establish the steering committee and the working groups, etc. It is a start, and then we will also look at other development partners and add to that as we go along. So I think overall we are quite happy, quite satisfied with the meeting, with what we have heard today. I think this is a very good continuation of the process that we started in 2018, and we look forward to working with all of you as we move along. And as people said, if we are ready to sign the Memorandum of Understanding, governments are ready to sign, then the CAREC Ministerial Conference or thereby would be a good time to do that. So with that, let me thank you all once again and wish you a good afternoon and a good evening, and thank you very much. Bye-bye. Over to you, Shinglen.
Okay, thank you, Safdar. So I just a very quick view on the next steps. The team will prepare a summary of proceedings to share with the countries for comments within 1 to 2 weeks. And we will also revise the roadmap incorporating comments from this workshop, or if there are any other comments in the coming 1 to 2 weeks, we'll also incorporate. And then we will also update you on the funding status once funding is secured. So we will just communicate with you on the next step of the implementation. So finally, I would like to thank the excellent support of the Secretariat team for preparing this workshop, including our colleagues in ADB headquarters and also in the 3 countries. And with that, I just want to wish you all safe and well. So until we meet next, and goodbye from now. Thank you very much. Yeah.